tonight.
If Stanley Tookie Williams were just another vicious convict on death row trying to evade execution, or if he had been a vicious gang leader who now teaches school kids how to avoid becoming what he used to be, or if Williams had been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, not won one, just nominated for one, chances are it wouldn't have made a 60-minute story. But because he's all three, an inmate on death row who teaches inner-city kids how to avoid joining gangs, and a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize, his is a 60-minute story. Stanley Williams has spent 23 years, nearly half his life, at San Quentin State Prison near San Francisco, awaiting execution for robbing and murdering 4 people. Williams says since he's been on death row, he's had time to reflect on the violence and destruction he caused by founding the Crips, the most notorious street gang in America. And 11 years ago, in an effort to redeem himself, he made an appeal to street gangs everywhere to make peace.
Working together, we can put an end to this cycle that creates deep pain in the hearts of our mothers, our fathers, and our people who have lost loved ones to this senseless violence.
Now, at age 50, Stanley Williams is literally trying to rewrite his violent history. From his 9-by-4-foot prison cell, he has authored 9 books for school children that warn about the perils of gangs and violence, gangs and drugs, gangs and self-esteem, and about the harsh realities of life in prison. And from death row, Williams has been running a one-man multimedia campaign to promote his anti-gang message, which extends from the internet, where he has his own website, to a reverential made-for-TV movie about his life.
I used to be the king of the Crips. Look at my kingdom now.
And to radio stations across the country which are running a public service announcement featuring Stanley Williams.
You don't want to be in a gang. I've turned my life around. You can too. I'll show you how.
And what may be unheard of for a convicted murderer, Williams is actually invited by public schools to talk directly to students by telephone from death row. We sat in one day recently when Williams used one of the 3 hours of phone time he's allotted per week to call a class at Leadership High School in San Francisco. Many of the students come from gang-infested neighborhoods and have experienced firsthand the effects of gang violence, like 10th grader Orlando.
A friend of mine from another school was shot and killed.
Welcome to another episode, everyone. And as you can see, we're talking about Stanley Tookie Williams, the co-founder, the leader of the Crips. It depends on who you ask. He was convicted of 4 murders and sentenced to death and spent many years on death row. As you can see, he authored in excess of 9 books. Most of these books were geared towards children, teaching them and showing them the perils of gang life and encouraging them to not join gangs, or if they are in gangs, to get out of gangs. Now, some individuals, of course, were saying, and he was nominated, as you heard earlier, for Nobel Peace Prize, and some individuals were saying that, he was doing this as a means to get out of prison, that he was not truly rehabilitated. He wasn't trying to help anyone. He was not trying to help the youth, that he just wanted off of death row. But many other people, many of his supporters, swear by Tookie's change and transformation and believe that he saved many lives with his work in his later years with these books and his talking like he's about to do here in this classroom and trying to steer children away from gangs, adolescents away from gang life and gang culture, and that he should be applauded for his work, and that had the government kept him alive, that he could have helped to end some of this gang culture, since he was charged with helping to start some of it. And many theories abound, of course, that is perhaps at least some of the reason why the government, in fact, decided to go through with this execution, because they believe that with him being alive, he had the power, the personal power, to help transform some of this gang culture for the better as it related to the black community. This is, of course, not what they want. They would prefer the gang violence to continue on, and so that they can continue to reap the benefits from us deleting one another. So Tookie was a threat in that way, and as many black men are, who has the potential to bring and change, to uplift the people and change the consciousness and the thinking of the people, which is what is necessary for a revolution. It depends on where which side of the aisle you are on, which side you fall on as to whether or not Tookie was authentic in his later years, in his transformation, in his change to do better, to interfere with gang culture, to help get gang individuals off of the street, or whether or not it was all a ruse and or a ploy to get off of death row. I'm interested to know what you all think in the comments. But let's continue with this first, and perhaps you'll have a more sturdy opinion once we're done as to whether or not Tookie was authentic or whether or not, again, it was a ploy.
A couple weeks ago, another friend of mine was shot, but he survived.
The students who had read Williams' book, Life in Prison, prepared a list of questions for him.
Hi, Mr. Williams.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Marianne.
Hello, Marianne.
Hey, my question is, your book talks about transformation. How do we know it's sincere?
My work speaks for itself. I'm not trying to convince anyone of my transformation. I know I have changed. God knows I have changed. And the individuals who are listening to my voice should be able to detect that I've actually made a transformation.
What caused you to change?
It took years and years for me to experience a change. I started off reading a lot. It opened up a new world for me, and in time I developed a conscience, and I was no longer filled with self-hate.
So my question is, are you afraid of dying or death? Why or why not?
Hey, that's a nice question. I like that. Pretty profound. Well, honestly, I don't want to die, but death is a constant reminder here. It's something that I live with and I can't dwell upon all the time because I have to do what I can in order to write these books.
The students told us that what Stanley Williams has to say is having an impact on them at a critical time in their lives when the pressure can be strong to join a gang.
He really sincerely made a change and is trying to help us, and I think that I commend him for that. I know for sure it makes me want to stay out of San Quentin.
What did he say that makes you want to stay out of San Quentin?
But just describing everyday things. The violence, having to look over your shoulder, you don't want to, so you don't get stabbed. Everything. Prison is just not a place you want to be.
Some people say that he's not sincere, that this is a ploy to get off of death row or to get out of prison. How would you respond to that?
I think some of those people are simple-minded because they think that people can't really change. But what he has done is turned his whole life around, and you can see that he's sincere because all the books he's written, the trouble he's going through to try to turn people the other way that are going down the path he did.
It is Stanley Williams' work with these children and thousands of others who've read his books that prompted a member of the Swiss parliament to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize 4 years ago, placing him in the company of people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Dalai Lama, and Mother Teresa. Williams was nominated again this year by California professor of philosophy, Philip Gasper.
Here is somebody with so few resources, but through strength of personality and perseverance, he has managed to have this enormous impact. I think he's an incredible role model.
But, you know, this is a man who has been convicted of 4 murders. There's no question about the founding of the Crips, the violence and life of mayhem that he led. I don't understand how you then nominate someone like that for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, there's no question that he has had, a violent past. But, you know, the same is true of some other people that have won the Nobel Peace Prize as well. Henry Kissinger was awarded it in 1973, and, you know, many people would claim that he's a war criminal. F.W. de Klerk got it with the end of apartheid. He'd supervised that system of racism and oppression.
Because he was a racist.
But the Nobel Peace Prize isn't awarded for what your past is like. You don't have to have an unblemished past. It's awarded on the basis of, have you made a contribution towards peace? And that, I think, is what is true of Stanley Williams.
Not according to Vernell Crittenden, a San Quentin prison official who's been monitoring Stanley Williams for 23 years. Ever since he arrived on death row.
I am aware that he has been nominated. I've actually had the opportunity to spend several hours with Mother Teresa when she visited here at San Quentin, as I was one of her personal escorts through the prison. And Stanley Williams is no Mother Teresa.
What do you think he's trying to accomplish with these books?
Well, I think that all of this is all part of his way of attempting to escape the executioner and being held accountable for the heinous crime he committed on March 11th, 1979, when he shot a 67-year-old man in a motel and shot his 63-year-old wife, then turned and shot his 43-year-old daughter. And I think that he's trying to escape that consequence.
Although Stanley Williams has lost all of his numerous appeals so far, he still maintains he's innocent of the 4 murders that landed him in prison. We went to San Quentin recently to meet Williams. We weren't allowed to bring our television cameras inside, but we were permitted to have these photographs taken in a visitor's cage on death row. The next day, I spoke with Williams by speakerphone. Some of your critics have said that your writing these books is merely a ploy by a guilty man, and that what you want to do is do nice things for society only after you've been locked away and sentenced to die.
If that were true, there would be hundreds of others here and abroad doing likewise before and after me. I'm not a coward, and I would never step on the backs of children to save my life.
The Federal Appeals Court in California, which a year and a half ago upheld Stanley Williams' death penalty conviction, also made a highly unusual statement in support of Williams, saying that his laudable efforts opposing gang violence and his good works and accomplishments since incarceration may make him a worthy candidate for clemency from the governor. That came as a surprise to Robert Martin, the man who prosecuted Stanley Williams and sent him to death row.
I just was astonished that a judge would say that. Stanley was a very brutal person, and I would see no moral equivalent between what he's doing with the books and the crimes that have been charged.
Do you think that he has redeemed himself?
No, I don't. I think perhaps before his God in some way. That's a private affair. Let me put it to you this way. If you're an alcoholic, to be cured or to be rehabilitated, the first thing you have to do is to admit that you're an alcoholic. He's never admitted that he's a murderer. Therefore, how can he be rehabilitated?
What's more,
because he doesn't have to admit it to you. He admits it in the privacy of his heart. He doesn't have to publicly admit this in order to be rehabilitated. He knows what he did and did not do. And he knows he has to reconcile that with himself, not with you. Now, these individuals, are going to send me down a path that I may not be able to recover from, so I'm going to let it go. But to imply that this man has no redeemable qualities based on his past is absolutely mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. And when we think about the history of this country and the history of these sick individuals, it always pains me and bothers me when I hear them talk about the crimes of someone else. And to describe them as, monstrous and bestial as a result of the crimes that they are accused of, when these individuals are just the sickest people you've ever met in your life, the sickest. Just a bunch of hypocrites, man, Now, again, I'm not going to make it about that because I don't know what happened with Tookie's situation with his case, whether he was guilty of this or not. He maintained his innocence throughout his life. as many people do, of course, charged with such gruesome and grisly crimes and faced with death, then yeah, you're going to maintain your innocence. I understand that. But just the thought that he has no redeemable qualities, that he cannot turn his life around based on his past, is a fallacy. He and anyone else can turn their life around.
Vernell Crittenden says that if Stanley Williams were totally rehabilitated, he would not only admit to the murders, he would also agree to be debriefed by prison officials, giving them information about the Crips and the way they operate, something Williams has so far refused to do.
So you think that today, by sitting down and talking to prison authorities, he could help diffuse the situation on the streets?
By him being himself involved in debriefing, it opens the door for others that are in the Crip gang to come forward, and they will tell their stories. But when they see their original godfather, who stands tall in the face of, as they say, in the face of death, and he refuses to tell anything, then that makes that young 16-year-old that's out there with that weapon feel just as committed.
But what information could he have that would be of any value to law enforcement authorities?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. This time here, this individual here, Vernell, bro, is just a prison official. It's not your job to judge whether or not Stanley Tookie Williams has authentically made a transformation or not. It's not your job to decipher whether or not his assertions are authentic or not. Your job is to house these individuals, not even to rehabilitate them, because you do not rehabilitate them. Not to offer your opinion as to his guilt and or innocence and whether or not he should win a Nobel Peace Prize or not. These dudes are just hating. At the end of the day, what information, as Ed Bradley here just asked this individual, what can he's been on death row at this juncture, at the time of this interview, for however long, 2 decades, 20 years or something. What can he say to you that's going to help you dismantle the Crips? What does he know? The things that changed so much in the gang culture at this time, by the time he had been in there for 20 years, there's nothing that he can say, what the Crips do this, the Crips rob people and shoot people, that you already know that. What is it that you want him to tell you that's going to help you in your effort to dismantle the gang culture? Absolutely nothing. This is just an excuse. One of the many excuses that you're using to justify you not being in favor of, reducing the sentence or getting this individual off of death row and helping him save his life.
Who are investigating present-day gang activity when he's been locked up for over 20 years.
There's a great deal of contact that go on between the outside community and the inmates within these walls.
This dude is full of it, bro. I promise you, I hadn't even seen it. I think I may have seen this like some years. I may even did this video before on my channel. I'll tell you, I was thinking about that earlier. I don't know. I'm doing so many damn videos now. I can't keep up. I know I've seen this video before. Don't fault me if I did react to it before already some time ago. But it's just what I just said. I knew I hadn't seen this before I just reacted to it right now, but I knew that he had already been in there a good 20 years or something by the time they were doing this interview. And as Ed Bradley just asked me, what could he possibly tell you that will help you out? He's been in here for 20 years. Oh, they communicate all of the time. Man, he's on death row. He has almost no communication. He has 3 hours of phone call a week, a phone time a week, and he's not using that to contact gang members. Some young gang member, he's been locked up for 20 years trying to save his life, writing children's books. He's not calling the hood, talking about what's going on in the hood. So he has no information to offer you individuals. The only thing they can tell you about is the past, how the gangs got started, how he may have started the gang or helped to co-found the gang, etc. But he can't tell you how to dismantle the gang. He doesn't have that knowledge. Apparently, you all don't even have that knowledge. So how can you expect him to have it? You're asking something of him that is impossible, and you know it.
He can explain to us how they gain their money, how they set up their trafficking. He can explain on how they have set up for the collection of weapons.
Stanley Williams told me he doesn't have anything to give. He has no current information about the Crips, and even if he did, he says it would violate his code of honor to be debriefed.
I have to say that the word debriefing is a euphemistic term for snitching, and my convictions won't allow that.
We need to have role models, particularly in our African American communities, and a role model that says, I don't snitch on gang members, I don't care how violent or what acts they carry out. I think is the wrong message, because gangs are running rapid through our communities. Young people out there killing one another, and they're buying into the same code of silence that Stanley Williams is sharing with you today.
Nevertheless, Professor Philip Gasper believes that the positive message Stanley Williams is sharing with children across the country in his books makes him worth more to society alive than dead.
What good would come from executing this guy? Here's somebody who is saying to kids, I can show you that there's a different way, somebody who they will listen to. If Stan is dead, then there aren't very many other people who can have that same kind of impact and influence on kids' lives.
Stanley, how do you convince people that you are worthy? The reality is that people would look at you and remember the way you were and say, this guy was convicted, he's lost his appeals, he's on death row, he got what he deserved.
Yes, well, I can see where they would say something like that. I mean, I'm just trying to remain optimistic and continue to do the things that I do. I don't have the power to stop these people from executing me. I wish I did, but I don't.
If Stanley Williams loses his remaining legal appeals, he is expected to ask California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger for clemency, which could commute his sentence to life in prison. If the governor denies his request, Williams could be executed within a year.
Wow. There you have it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Stanley Tookie Williams, in his own words, for the most part, he said that he has no information to offer, that his convictions will not allow him to snitch. That individual there, Vernell, felt like that if he snitched, he can help change the gang culture. If he debriefed on what was going on with the Crips and gang culture that he helped to start, it's not like if he would have snitched, that would have saved his life anyway. They wouldn't. Again, there was nothing to snitch on. That's just my personal opinion. But you all let me know what you think in the comments. Again, I'm just interested to know whether or not, say whatever you want, but I'm interested to know whether or not you think Tookie changed his life or not. That's what's just hanging in the head for me. Whether or not you sincerely think, or whether you think he sincerely changed his life, or whether it was a ploy and a ruse as indicated. Or that do you think that he could have did a lot of good had he still been alive? Saving children's lives. He was certainly on his way to doing that, and I'm sure had saved many lives. You see the children there in school saying that he helped them just with that conversation. So if he's keeping the pressure on, instead of writing books and having interviews and talking to the people about gang culture and how to get out of it and why they should get out of it, I'm just hard pressed to believe that this would not save some people's lives. But the government didn't feel like that was a good enough exchange, him saving many lives instead of taking his life. And so they took it and they killed Tookie some time ago, as we all know, 2005 or something. They took him out. But again, I don't know. He was convicted of 4 murders. He was on death row. He had carried out his appeals. They did not work out, and they ended up taking him out, man. I don't know. I do believe that he could have saved many lives had he still been here. That's the only thing. I do believe that. And I do believe that he was sincere. What is he going to do? Get out and still be gang banging after experiencing life on death row for decades? I don't think so. I think he could have got out and would have got out and helped physically to show up and change gang members' lives and change the gang culture and speak out against the gang culture, which in itself will save lives. But again, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Stay safe and stay free, people. Rest in peace to Tookie.